Usually when we talk about the golden age of an empire, we tend to focus on the obvious stuff.
Sure.
The battles won, the borders drawn, the massive monuments built. But I was reading through the research for today's deep dive. This is an analysis of a script from the Islamic Economics podcast, and it just strikes me that the real conquest wasn't necessarily on the battlefield.
No.
It was in the marketplace.
That is a very, very fair assessment. You can conquer a city with a sword, certainly, but you can only run an empire with a ledger. And what we are looking at today is, it's essentially the operating system of one of the biggest empires in history.
And that operating system starts with a serious glitch, a really big one, because the source material paints this incredibly vivid, almost cinematic picture of the early Islamic conquests, let's say around 680 CE.
Right.
Imagine you are a merchant in Damascus. The Islamic Empire has expanded so rapidly, defeating the Persians, pushing back the Byzantines. You walk into a bustling market to buy, a bolt of fine silk. You open your purse, and what comes out?
Well, historically speaking, you're pulling out a coin with the face of the emperor you just defeated.
Right. You're pulling out a gold coin with a Byzantine Christian emperor on it, holding a cross, or a silver coin with a Persian king wearing a Zoroastrian fire crown.
It's an incredible image.
It's this massive disconnect. You have political control, but you are literally using the enemy's cash to buy your groceries.
It is a crisis of sovereignty.
Yeah.
And that is what we're really unpacking today, the coins of the Caliphate. It's the story of how a new superpower went from that, that awkward phase of using their enemy's money to inventing a financial system so robust that archaeologists are digging these things up in Viking hordes in Sweden.
And in China.
And in China.
And what blew my mind in the reading is that this transition isn't just about minting metal. The argument here is that the specific monetary revolution in the 7th century actually laid the groundwork for modern economic concepts. Things like Gresham's law.
Oh, absolutely. And the quantity theory of money. Things that European economists wouldn't put a name to for centuries.
Exactly. We are looking at the moment money moved from being just a physical commodity to a kind of social contract.
And that shift is painful. It doesn't happen overnight.
So let's start in that awkward teenage phase of the empire. The Muslims have conquered these massive territories. To the west, you have the former Byzantine lands Syria, Egypt.
Right.
To the east, the Persian Sassanid Empire. And they basically inherit two completely different economic engines.
Two different engines running on two different fuels. This is so crucial to understand. In the west, the economy is powered by the Byzantine gold solidus.
Okay.
In the east, it's the Sassanid silver drum. Now, these aren't just coins. They're institutions. People trust them. They know the weight. They know the look. If the new caliphate just bans them overnight, trade stops.
The whole thing grinds to a halt.
The markets crash. It's like if a new government took over the U.S. and immediately banned the dollar.
Total chaos.
Precisely. So they are stuck. They have political control, but zero economic identity. And they don't have the infrastructure yet. The mints, the die cutters, the metallurgists, to replace millions and millions of coins in circulation.
So the sources describe the initial solution as, pragmatic is the polite word for it. I'd call it messy.
I think messy is fair.
They used countermarking.
It was a stopgap, absolutely. Yeah. A temporary fix. They took the existing stock foreign coins with crosses and fire altars and physically punched Islamic inscriptions onto them.
I love the visual the source gives us here. You got a coin with Emperor Heraclius looking all majestic, and someone has just taken a hammer and stamped "in the name of Allah" right across his forehead.
It is almost graffiti as state policy. It's a way of saying we own this now, but think about the logistics of that.
Yeah.
You are relying on old stock. The weights are inconsistent because these coins have been circulated, clipped, shaved down for decades. The purity varies.
So if you are a merchant trying to do a deal between Baghdad and Damascus, you are taking a huge risk every single time you accept a payment.
A massive risk. Because you don't know if that stamped coin is actually worth the metal it's made of. The brand is weak.
And if I'm a trader, I'm probably going to ask for a premium just to take that risk.
Which slows everything down. And an empire cannot function if its currency is a gamble. You need velocity of money. You need people to trade without thinking twice.
This is where the story shifts.
It has to. You need someone with a vision to say, we are done improvising.
Enter the protagonist of our deep dive, Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan.
The 5th Umayyad Caliph. He takes power in 685 CE. And it's important to understand, he isn't just a warlord, he is an administrator. a bureaucrat, really, in the best sense of the word.
Right, he's looking at this sprawling empire and realizing it's just too loose.
Exactly. He's the guy who centralized the postal system and made Arabic the official language of government.
So he seems to be obsessed with standardization.
He understood that standardization is power. If everyone speaks the same administrative language and uses the same money, you have a unified state. So around 696 CE, he issues the decree that changes everything.
He bans the foreign coins.
Gone. No more Byzantine solidi, no more Persian drams. The Caliphate is going to mint its own money from scratch.
But this is where the design becomes revolutionary. And I want to spend a second on this because it's so easy to miss the significance.
Elise.
Up until this point in history, almost every major currency featured a guy's face. A Caesar, a king, a Shah. It's always the guy in charge.
Always.
Al-Malik says, no faces.
It is a massive aesthetic break. Obviously, there's a theological driver here, the Islamic aversion to depicting living beings, especially on something as mundane as money that gets dropped in the mud or stepped on.
Right. It was seen as undignified.
But politically,
Yeah.
it is arguably even more powerful.
How so? Because usually, putting your face on the money is the ultimate flex, right?
True, but if you put a king's face on a coin, you're saying, this money is good because I say so. It relies on personal authority. By replacing the face with calligraphy Quranic verses, the date, the mint location Abd al-Malik is removing the human element entirely. He is making the currency a statement of divine truth and eternal law.
It's like moving from a personality cult currency to a constitutional currency. The coin itself becomes the text.
Precisely. And imagine the impact on a Byzantine trader coming into the market. You can no longer use your emperor's face to buy grain. You have to handle a coin that proclaims the Islamic faith and the oneness of God.
It forces the world to acknowledge the new sovereign identity.
Every time they buy a loaf of bread, it's branding on a global scale.
But a cool design doesn't make a stable economy. I mean, if the coins are light, nobody cares what's written on them.
Not all.
In fact, if you have beautiful calligraphy on a coin that's 50% copper when it should be gold, you just look like a fraud.
And that is the second, and arguably more difficult, half of Abd al-Malik's reform. The rigor. He introduces the gold dinar and the silver dirham, and the specifications are incredibly tight. The dinar is set at approximately 4.25 grams of gold.
And we are talking high purity.
Very high, like 98% plus.
And the silver dirham is set at about 2.97 grams. I noticed in the notes that those numbers 4.25 and 2.97 seem weirdly specific. Why those weights? Why not just make it an even 5 grams and call it a day?
They were threading a needle. They had to create a weight that could interface with the old systems so people would recognize the value, but was distinct enough to stand alone. But the key wasn't just the number, it was the consistency.
Okay.
In the medieval world, trust was physical. You trusted the coin only as far as you could weigh it. By ensuring that a dinar minted in Damascus weighed exactly the same as one minted in Egypt, Abd al-Malik built a fungible system.
Fungible, meaning one dinar is exactly equal to another dinar no matter where it comes from.
Exactly. And that allows for speed. You don't have to weigh every single coin every single time. You trust the stamp.
Now, this leads to the bimetallic system, which I found fascinating because bimetallism, trying to run an economy on both gold and silver simultaneously, usually ends in disaster.
It usually does. One metal always eats the other. It is the classic economic trap. Historically, governments try to fix the exchange rate.
They decree 1 gold coin equals 10 silver coins no matter what.
Right, regardless of what the miners are digging up or what the market wants.
But if silver suddenly becomes scarce, the market value goes up. So if the government insists it's still cheap, the system just breaks. People will buy up all the silver at the cheap government rate and sell it on the black market.
But the Caliphate generally avoided that trap. The exchange rate was usually around 1 to 10 or 1 to 12, but, and this is the crucial part, it floated.
It floated.
It wasn't a rigid state-enforced peg that ignored reality. They allowed the market to determine the relative value of the metals.
So they had a mechanism for correction. This connects to that concept mentioned in the notes, Tarji.
Tarji, or preference shift. It is an incredibly sophisticated observation for the time. The Islamic scholars and merchants realized that if the official ratio gets out of whack with the market reality, people stop spending the undervalued metal.
They hoard it. Let's walk through this. If the government says my gold coin is worth 10 silver coins, but I can melt it down and sell the gold bullion for, say, 12 silver coins worth.
You're not spending that coin.
I am never going to spend that gold coin at the store. I'm going to hide it under my mattress.
And you are going to spend your bad silver coins, the overvalued ones instead.
Which is exactly Gresham's law. Bad money drives out good. I remember learning that in Econ 101, but I always thought that was a European discovery from the 16th century.
So Thomas Gresham gets the credit in the West, yes. But here we have Al-Ghazali, the great Islamic philosopher, articulating the exact same mechanics in the 11th century.
Wow.
He beat Europe to the punch by about 500 years.
I want to drill into that. How did Al-Ghazali explain it? Did he use, like, charts and graphs?
No. He used philosophy and psychology. He looked at it through the lens of incentives. He saw that money flows like water. It goes where it is treated best. If a ruler artificially suppresses the value of gold, gold leaves the market.
It just disappeared.
Al-Ghazali realized that money isn't just a static tool. It is an active participant in the economy that reacts to policy.
It is humbling to realize that these modern economic laws are really just observations of human nature that people figured out 1,000 years ago. We aren't as clever as we think we are.
It really is. And they figured out the dark side of it too. Because having a high-purity gold standard is wonderful.
Until the government runs out of gold.
The eternal temptation.
It's debasement.
The quickest way for a king to lose his legitimacy.
Let's clarify debasement for anyone who doesn't track medieval monetary fraud. This isn't just inflation, right? It's not just prices going up naturally.
No, it's deception.
It's a lie.
Right. Say you are the ruler. You need to pay your army for a new campaign, but you only have 1,000 gold coins in the vault. So you melt them down, you mix in 50% copper, and you mint 2,000 coins. You tell the soldiers they are worth the same.
But you have effectively stolen half the value from everyone holding that currency.
It's state-sponsored counterfeiting. And the source material brings up two scholars who absolutely went to war against this practice, Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Maqrizi.
Their approaches seem very different, though. Ibn Taymiyyah's take is fascinating because he doesn't treat it as just bad math. He treats it as a sin.
For him, it's a moral failing. Ibn Taymiyyah is writing in the 13th and 14th centuries, a time of massive political upheaval with the Mongols and Crusaders. For him, the currency is part of the Sharia, the divine law. He argues that the ruler has a social contract with the people.
Okay.
When a ruler mints a coin, he is making a promise about its value.
So if he debases it, he is technically lying to every single person in the empire.
Exactly. He compares it to a shopkeeper rigging the scales to cheat a customer. He says it is a form of ghash, or fraud. His logic is unassailable. If you punish a merchant for lying about the weight of wheat, how can the Sultan be allowed to lie about the weight of gold?
That is a bold stance to take against a guy who can have you beheaded. Hey, king, you're a fraud.
Ibn Taymiyyah was not known for being timid. He spent plenty of time in prison for his views. But then you have Al-Maqrizi in the 15th century who takes a much more analytical approach. He is almost like a modern data scientist.
Or a central banker. He studied the Mamluk period, right? When things were really going off the rails.
The Mamluks were famous for debasing currency to fund their internal wars. And Al-Maqrizi tracks the correlation. He documents, in this year, the copper content increased by X, and the price of bread went up by Y.
He's drawing a straight line between the two.
He essentially wrote one of history's first systematic studies of cost-push inflation. He saw the mechanism.
He understood that the government prints junk money and suddenly the poor can't afford to eat.
And he understood that this destroys the social fabric. When money loses meaning, society becomes unstable. People stop producing because they don't know what their labor's worth. He called it guma, or grief, distress. He linked economic mismanagement directly to the suffering of the population.
That link is so important. Economics isn't just numbers, it's people's livelihoods. But let's swing back to when the system worked. Because before the Mamluk debasement, in the high period of the Caliphate, this standardization created something unprecedented. The notes call it a trade bridge.
That is almost an understatement. Think about the scale. We are talking about a common market stretching from Spain to the borders of China.
So walk me through the user experience. If I'm a merchant in Cordoba, Spain, starting my journey.
Okay, so you load up your camels with olive oil or leather, and you have a bag of gold dinars minted right there in Andalusia. You can travel across North Africa, through Egypt, up into the Levant, across to Baghdad.
All the way to the Silk Road.
All the way to the Silk Road cities like Samarkand. And that kind in your pocket, it is good everywhere.
That is massive. So no money changers shaving 10% off at every border crossing.
Exactly. Transaction costs drop to near zero.
Yeah.
You don't have to wonder if the local warlord in Cairo accepts the currency of the local warlord in Tunis. It is all one standard.
It integrated the economy in a way that just wouldn't be seen again until the modern era.
I mean, it's a bit like the Eurozone, but arguably even more effective given the technology at the time. It turned the dinar into the dollar of the Middle Ages. It became the global reserve currency.
And we have physical proof of this. The Vikings, this was the detail that really stuck with me.
The Viking hordes are my favorite piece of evidence for this. You have these Norse raiders who have no allegiance to Islam, no political connection to the Caliphate.
Fun.
They are raiding monasteries in England and trading in Russia, yet when they bury their treasure, what do they hoard?
Islamic dirhams.
Islamic dirhams. Tens of thousands of them have been found in Sweden.
But why? Just because of the silver content? Or something else?
It was because they viewed it as the ultimate store of value. They knew that a dirham was 2.97 grams of good silver. It was trusted.
Even the Venetians, who were the arch-capitalists of Europe and often at war with Muslim powers, they were using them.
Money transcends war. The Venetians struck their own coins, the ducat, largely to compete with the dinar. But for a long time, they just used the Islamic currency. They didn't care whose god was on the coin. They cared about the purity.
That is the ultimate proof of concept, when your enemy trusts your central bank more than their own.
Exactly.
But maintaining that trust required some pretty serious security. We have to talk about the mint masters.
The people running the coin factories. This was a high-prestige job, but also a high-risk job. You needed technical skill to mix the alloys perfectly, but you also needed immense integrity.
The notes mentioned the punishment for counterfeiting or tampering with the dies. It wasn't a fine.
No, we are talking amputation.
Yeah.
Losing a hand.
Which sounds barbaric to us.
It does, but you have to look at the logic of the time. In a system where the entire economy relies on the physical integrity of the coin, a counterfeiter isn't just stealing from a person.
They're attacking the state.
They are undermining the trust that holds the empire together. If people stop trusting the coin, trade stops. If trade stops, cities starve. The severity of the punishment reflected the severity of the threat.
So we've gone from a messy teenage phase of stamping Arabic over Byzantine faces to a sophisticated, globalized financial system that understood inflation, exchange rates, and the velocity of money.
And one that eventually fell apart when rulers forgot the lessons of Al-Ghazali and Ibn Taymiyyah.
So what's the synthesis here? When we look back at the coins of the Caliphate, what are we really learning? Because it feels like more than just a history of metallurgy.
For me, it comes back to that idea of the social contract. We tend to think of money as stuff, gold, paper, digits. But this history proves that money is actually trust.
It is a relationship between the ruler and the ruled.
Exactly. When Abd al-Malik standardized the coins, he wasn't just fixing weights. He was building a reputation. He was saying, you can trust us. And that trust lubricated trade across 3 continents.
But when later rulers, like the Mamluks, treated money as their personal piggy bank to be debased at will,
They broke that contract. And the market reacts. Prices soar, trade collapses, and the empire fades. You can have the strongest army in the world, but if nobody trusts your money, you are built on sand.
it really highlights that economics isn't some separate science that happens in a vacuum. It is deeply tied to ethics.
You can't have a healthy market with corrupt leadership.
Ibn Taymiyyah saw that so clearly. He knew that the morality of the mint was tied to the stability of the state.
He really did.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on. We don't use gold coins anymore. We live in a world of fiat currency money backed by nothing but government decree. And on the other side, we have crypto, attempting to build trust through code because they don't trust the government.
It is the same battle, isn't it? If medieval scholars understood that money is a social contract, we have to ask, who are we signing that contract with today? The Federal Reserve, the blockchain.
The medium changes from gold to paper to bytes, but the requirement for trust is exactly the same.
And if history is any guide, trust is very hard to build and incredibly easy to destroy.
That is the lesson. Abd al-Malik built it, the Mamluks destroyed it. The question is, where are we on that timeline today?
That is the question.
Well, on that cheerful note, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the coins of the Caliphate. It turns out money really does make the world go round, even in 696 CE. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next one.